Here it is, the final part of Cuphead Bosses Ranked, here on the Gaming Movie Jerks. This is it, the top 3 hardest bosses in the whole game. Let's just jump right in. At number 3, we have Phantom Express. As mentioned in the last video, Phantom Express was originally at number 4, and Rumor Honeybottom's at number 3. But when we recorded footage, we decided to reverse them.
Now, before we get to the first phase, let's talk about a few mechanics that stick around for pretty much the entire fight. First up is the parry platform. Here, you can parry one side of the platform, which moves the platform in the direction that you parried it.
Basically, it's a grid of 3 that the platform is on. Here's an artist's rendition in case it wasn't explained clearly. This mechanic only serves to bother you in the first phase. You only need it in the second and third phases.
Also, there are these pumpkins that fly across the screen, and they drop this thing. I guess it's a bar of soap. If it hits the right spot on the platform, then the platform will move as if you parried it. These pumpkins can be killed, or you can parry the soap in midair before it reaches the platform. Also, I suppose I should note that this train platform is the only other time in the game where you parry a stationary object on the ground. We previously said that the springs in Werner Vermin's fight are the only instance, but that's wrong. There are a whopping 2 instances of this mechanic.
With that out of the way, we can finally talk about Phase 1. The platform starts on the left side of the screen, as we mentioned. You'll want to keep it here for this phase. This means being very careful about the pumpkins, and the enemy, Phantom Express, I guess, shoots eyeballs at you, which fly across the screen in a wavy pattern. This isn't that hard, but the pumpkin mechanic explained earlier makes this phase so much harder.
It'd be even harder with only one player, I would imagine. In Phase 2, and in fact for the rest of the fight, you'll be fighting an enemy that's above you. This particular one has huge skeleton hands that can cover up your entire platform. So all you have to do is move the platform when he's about to do it. There's plenty of telegraphing, I guess, but sometimes you'll have to move the platform 2 spots, and there's definitely not enough telegraphing to give you the time to do that.
Again, don't forget that the pumpkin is still here too. Sometimes he can help you and move the platform in the right direction before you even realized you needed to, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time, he's an annoyance like usual.
A lot of things happen in Phase 3. These 2 purple guys show up and spit lightning. You'll have to move the platform to make sure you're not in the way. The pumpkin mechanic is gone at least, but it's replaced by these ghosts that come out of the center car. When you kill them, they drop a pink skull that does the same thing as the soap bar from the pumpkin.
For some reason, this is never quite as annoying as the pumpkin. I think it's at least partially because killing the ghosts is much easier because you can hit them with the spread shot.
This is probably the easiest phase of the whole fight, but that's not really saying much. It's still ridiculous.
Finally, we reach Phase 4, where the engine, which apparently has a face and legs and a tail, shows up. Maybe this is why everyone hates the New York City subway. Trains are running around terrorizing people.
This phase isn't necessarily all that difficult either. Who am I kidding? It's extremely hard, especially since you're probably down to 1 health at this point. This phase also takes forever because you have very few opportunities to actually deal damage to the train.
Basically, you have to parry the train's tail, which opens the boiler door. The only time you can damage the train is when the door is open, exposing his heart. The train heart, of course. It can be really hard to hit him because of the positioning, which what makes this phase take so long.
Throughout the duration of this phase, he drops these flaming bone circle things, which drop to the bottom of the screen and move from right to left. Oftentimes, you'll completely forget about them in the midst of all the other stuff you have to do and get hit, probably losing your last hit point.
Also, once you manage to open the boiler door, these fireballs start to pour out. This is just more stuff flooding the screen that you have to worry about dodging.
It's safe to say that Phantom Express deserves his spot at number 3 on this list, but there's still 2 more ahead of him.
At number 2, we have Grim Matchstick. He's really hard. Like really hard. Like really, really, really hard.
First of all, his design is an obvious reference to this dragon boss from Mega Man 2. I appreciate that, and little else about this boss.
Phase 1 is hard. First of all, you have to keep jumping on these platforms, which appear in random spots. This is almost as annoying as Rumor Honeybottom's, though jumping from side to side is better than jumping a scrolling screen.
To start off with, he shoots these rings out of his eyes. He starts shooting 3 at a time, and later shooting 4. One of them is always parryable, too. You'll want to parry them, because getting as many super attacks as possible is very, very helpful, because Grim Matchstick is hard.
After shooting rings for a while, he starts to shoot fireballs, which move in a wave-like motion, After a while, he starts shooting 2 fireballs. He also starts to try and stab you with his tail. This is well telegraphed with a distinctive sound, so you better have your volume on.
This is a common theme in this boss fight and a lot of other boss fights ranked highly on this list. The projectiles are difficult enough to dodge on their own, but the scrolling platforms just make it that much harder.
These scrolling platforms stay for the entire fight, by the way, so get used to them.
His second phase is even harder than the first. He flies away and reappears at the other side of the screen, and he lays his tongue out the entire bottom portion. These fireball dudes will start to walk out, and some of them will occasionally jump up at you.
It's stupidly hard to pay attention to the random platforms, which are still here, by the way, and the fire dudes. It's nearly impossible to get through this section without taking a hit, in my opinion.
The difficulty of these fireballs is twofold. First of all, they always jump directly at you, which of course makes them hard to dodge. Even worse than that is figuring out exactly when you should move to dodge them. You can tell when one of them's going to jump because it'll stop at the bottom of the screen for a moment. But the amount of time that it stops isn't always the same, or at least it doesn't feel like it is. That makes it very hard to predict when you're supposed to jump, and that's really what makes this phase so hard.
Oh yeah, you also have to look out for the fire coming out of Grim Matchstick's nostrils.
They're not really that much of a threat though. We usually prefer to stay towards the back of the screen if at all possible.
The third phase, though, is among the most difficult in the game. The screen turns dark and it starts to rain. Menacing. 3 heads pop out of Grim Matchstick's body, and they start to shoot fireballs that are extremely hard to dodge because if you shoot them by accident, they turn into even more fireballs that shoot off into 4 different directions.
Occasionally, one of his heads will turn into a flamethrower, which is also immensely difficult to dodge. Sure, it has plenty of telegraphing, but when you're trying to stay on these stupid cloud platforms, it becomes 10 times harder.
We just don't really have much else to say about Grim Matchstick. He's just really hard. He's not complicated or anything, there isn't much to explain. He's just hard. The projectiles are hard, yes, but the platforms that really bring it to the next level. The fact that they are random means that sometimes you'll need to get out of the way of a projectile and there just isn't anywhere to go. The fight definitely deserves the number 2 spot, due in no small part to these stupid platforms.
Can you guess what number 1 is? I mean, there's only one other boss left, so it shouldn't be that hard. It's Dr. Call's robot. Phase 1 has about 1 billion things going on. It is the most difficult phase out of any boss in the entire game. It does not get any harder than this phase right here, though the rest of the fight comes pretty close. There are 3 parts of the robot you can attack. Each one is attacking you with something different, and when you destroy one of the parts, it'll change its attack. That means that there are at least 6 different attacks you have to know how to avoid for this phase, and they could be mixed and matched in any order depending on what order you destroy the sections of the robot.
The easiest of all the various projectiles is the one that comes out of the center of the robot. These pink things that fire lasers. You can parry them to turn them off, though. Overall, these aren't a huge threat. If you don't parry them, of course, you're going to get hit, because they cover an entire vertical distance of the screen.
There are also these ship things that fly out of the bottom part of the robot and try to fly up the screen in a zigzag motion. It doesn't take a lot of hits to kill them, though. Overall, these are only bad if you aren't paying attention. They're not quite as trivial as the pink lasers, but they're not really hard either.
Finally, there's the head laser cannon thing. While there's plenty of telegraphing to let you know when it's going to fire, there are 2 things that make it particularly annoying. First is that the actual laser is a lot wider than the non-damaging telegraph part of it. Second is that it blocks bullets. So, when the stupid laser is on screen, you pretty much can't deal damage to anything unless you're underneath it. That can be pretty hard to pull off depending on where you are when it starts firing.
As previously mentioned, destroying a section of the robot causes it to change its attack. When you destroy the middle part of Dr. Call's robot, which originally fired off the pink laser things, he'll occasionally hold up a giant magnet that pulls you closer to it. This just makes dodging the numerous projectiles even harder. The arms can also pop up in the middle of the screen and fire a slew of projectiles.
Once you destroy the dish on his head that fires the stupid laser, his head turns into a stupid cannon that fires nuts and bolts in all directions. The magnet makes these especially difficult to dodge.
Finally, when you destroy the bottom part, the worst projectile of the entire first phase is unleashed. These bombs, which chase after you, and when they explode, the blast radius is like 3 times bigger than the bomb itself. So these things will sneak up on you, and when you shoot them, they're so close that you won't even be able to avoid getting hit.
Once you destroyed all of the original attacks, a heart will pop out of the middle of the chest. Destroy this, and you're finally onto phase 2.
Compared to phase 1, the second phase is really simple. The robot head flies around the screen in a simple pattern. But of course this pattern makes it really hard to hit him, especially when you're in the plane. Did we mention this is a plane level? Because yeah, of course it is. Also, the bombs are still here during this phase. Because yeah, of course they are.
This phase may be simple, but it takes ages because of how few opportunities you have to hit the robot head. The bomb weapon is useful for approximately the second time in the entire game, I guess.
After what feels like a million years of taking pot shots at the head, you'll finally be on to Phase 3.
Phase 3 is absolutely insane. Just look at it. Just take a second and look at what's happening here. Dr. Call holds his gem or whatever, it fires out an absolute hellstorm of projectiles.
There are also these electrified walls that come up and try their best to hit you. They also, of course, block your bullets.
There isn't really anything to say about this phase. It's not complicated, but it's really hard. Just look at it some more.
Phase 1 is still a bit more difficult just because of how long it lasts and how complicated it is. But Phase 3 of this fight is really nerve-wracking because you need precise movements to dodge the bullet hell, and of course you're probably down to 1 HP at this point.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the Cuphead Bosses ranked series. We really enjoyed revisiting all the bosses, even though this game can be infuriatingly hard at times. Let us know what you think of the list in the comments down below. Maybe you totally agree. Maybe you think someone else deserves the #1 spot, which, if you do, you're wrong. Just let us know in the comment section down below. See you guys next time on the Gaming Movies.